Once upon a time, in a cozy little corner of a wide green meadow, there lived a cheerful little hedgehog named Hazel. Hazel wasn't like any ordinary hedgehog. Her prickles shimmered like tiny stars whenever the moonlight touched them. Her little eyes shone bright with curiosity, and she had the happiest giggle anyone had ever heard. Whenever Hazel laughed, it sounded like the tinkling of a tiny bell, and the sound was so cheerful that even the grumpiest badger or the sleepiest owl couldn't help but smile. One sunny morning, Hazel woke up with a grand idea buzzing in her head. She stretched her paws, wiggled her nose, and declared to herself, "I'm going to throw the biggest, most wonderful picnic the meadow has ever seen." She was so excited that she scampered off at once to tell her friends. First, she found Pip, the playful rabbit who could hop higher than anyone else. Pip's ears twitched when he heard her idea, and he clapped his paws together. "A picnic? That sounds amazing." Then she told Tilly, the tortoise, who loved telling long, winding stories that sometimes went on until the moon rose. Tilly nodded slowly and asked, "Will there be strawberries and clover sandwiches?" Hazel laughed and promised there would. Finally, she shared her plan with Freddie the frog, who loved to make up silly rhymes. Freddie croaked with delight and shouted, "Don't forget the jelly bugs. No picnic is complete without jelly bugs." Hazel giggled her tinkling giggle and announced, "Yes, yes, and yes. But if we want this picnic to be magical, we'll all need to work together." So the friends set off on their tasks. Pip bounded away to collect juicy berries. Tilly trotted off to gather wildflowers to decorate the picnic spot. Freddie hopped happily to the stream to collect fresh water in lily leaf cups. And Hazel scurried toward the orchard to gather sweet apples. Everything seemed perfect. Until, of course, little adventures began to happen along the way. Pip found the biggest blackberry bush he had ever seen. His eyes sparkled, and he began stuffing berries into his paws, his cheeks, and even behind his ears. But when he tried to hop home with his treasure, he bounced too high and landed right in the middle of the brambles. "Oh no, I'm stuck," he squeaked, as the thorny branches tangled in his fur. Hazel came hurrying when she heard his squeal, and she gently wiggled and tugged until Pip was free again. She brushed him off, and though his fur was covered in purple berry juice, she clapped her paws and laughed. "You look like a grape." Pip's whiskers twitched, and soon he was laughing too. "Maybe the picnic needs grape juice," he said proudly, showing off his purple stains. Meanwhile, Tilly was collecting wildflowers, carefully placing them on her shell until she looked like a moving rainbow. She hummed softly as she reached for one last daisy, but just then a gust of wind whooshed through the meadow. The flowers lifted off her back and scattered into the sky, floating away like tiny parachutes. "Oh, bother," sighed Tilly. Hazel arrived just in time to chase the flowers with her. The two friends scampered and stretched, catching petals in their paws and, sometimes in their mouths, sneezing when the pollen tickled their noses. When at last they gathered what they could, Hazel said kindly, "Don't worry, Tilly. Now we can sprinkle the petals all over the picnic blanket instead. It will look even prettier." Down by the stream, Freddie was busily scooping water into lily leaf cups. He stacked them carefully and began to hop back, but he didn't notice the smooth round stone in his path. "Ribbit, oh dribble," he cried as he tripped and sent the water splashing everywhere. His shoulders slumped as he croaked, "Oh ribbits and dribbles, I've ruined it." But Hazel, who had come to check on him, tapped him gently with her paw. "Don't be sad, Freddie. The stream isn't going anywhere. We'll just fill them again. This time I'll help." Together they balanced the cups on Hazel's prickles like a tray, and Freddie clapped his webbed hands in delight. "Hazel, you're a genius." At last, everything was ready. The apples and berries were piled high, the flowers and petals made the blanket beautiful, and the water sparkled in the leaf cups. The friends spread out a big blanket made of woven leaves, decorated it with petals, and set out all the treats. Just as they were about to begin their feast, a rustling sound came from the bushes. Pip's ears shot straight up. "Who's there?" he whispered. "Not me," Freddie croaked nervously. "Not me," Tilly said. Hazel tilted her head and waited. Out from the leaves stepped a tiny hedgehog with round cheeks and short, stubby prickles. His eyes were wide, and he spoke in a shy, small voice. "Hello. My name's Henry. I smelled your picnic and wondered if If I could join? Hazel's eyes sparkled. Of course you can, Henry. There's plenty for everyone. The little hedgehog's face lit up as he hurried over, and soon he was sitting with the others, tasting berries and sipping from a lily leaf cup. At first Henry was quiet, but before long Pip's silly jokes, Freddie's rhymes, and Tilly's endless stories had him laughing so hard his little prickles shook. The friends feasted until the sun dipped low, painting the meadow in gold and pink. Pip balanced berries on his nose and juggled them into his mouth. Freddie made up a ribbit song about jellybugs and pie. Tilly told a story about a tortoise who once raced the clouds. And Hazel looked around at her friends, new and old, and sighed happily. This is even better than I imagined, not because of the food or the flowers, but because we're all together. And just as if the sky itself agreed, hundreds of fireflies appeared, twinkling above the meadow like tiny stars. The friends lay back, full and happy, watching the lights dance. Hazel's giggle rang out, like the tinkling of a little bell, and the sound wrapped around them all like a blanket of joy. That night, under the glowing fireflies, Hazel knew she had created not just the most magical picnic in the meadow, but a memory her friends would treasure forever. And from that day on, whenever anyone in the meadow felt lonely or sad, they only had to remember Hazel's tinkling laugh, and suddenly the world felt warm and full of friendship once again.